Hello, welcome to PalacioMagazine.com podcast, Voices in Our Heads. My name is Antonio Ruiz, and my premier guest today is the former publisher of our namesake, Palacio De Long Beach, and currently Executive Director Early Childhood Education at the YMCA of Greater Long Beach. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Antonio.
So, we've known each other for a long time, and before we talk about the magazine, I thought we'd first talk a little bit about you. Tell us a little bit about your roots. I think we share something in common.
Yes, we do. We happen to both be Puerto Rican. We have that in common. We're also both brilliant people, and I think that's why we're good friends. Let's see. I could tell you about myself. I'm born and raised in this community. I'm from Southern California, and I have deep roots and family in California. But I also spent a lot of time in Puerto Rico. My grandmother, who raised me and came from Puerto Rico in 1961, had lots of family that she liked to visit, and she would take me back with her to Puerto Rico in the summers. So I had this wonderful time that I would travel every summer and be with extended family, and spent a lot of time getting to know the other side of my roots.
You lived for a time in New York?
I did. So after I graduated from UCLA, I had no obligations and decided that it was a perfect time to spread my wings and try living in the big city. And I had fallen in love with the city after having done an internship in Washington, D.C. and traveling up to New York City. And I went in '99 to New York and spent about 10 years residing in the beautiful state of New York.
But in New York City itself?
In Brooklyn. I lived in Brooklyn and I worked in Manhattan.
How was that?
That was wonderful. Back to my Puerto Rican roots, I finally felt like I was surrounded by more than just my family and extended family. The community, the Puerto Rican community is just so prevalent in New York City, and I felt very connected to that, as well as to just the diversity and the vibrance and the energy. I loved it. I loved all of it. The weather was a little bit difficult to adjust to for me, but I got used to it. Again, I was young and full of energy and willing to probably put up with more than I am at this stage in my life.
How did that shape you? Being born here, then you lived in Puerto Rico, then you lived in New York. I mean, there was people who grow up in the same neighborhood that they were born and raised, but you got around to different places.
Well, I think it absolutely, just like traveling, living in a different environment from the one that you grew up in, certainly forces you to grow and exposes you to so many different types of people. I used to describe New York City as like the entire world condensed into this tiny island. And that's what it felt like. I was exposed to so many new cultures and so many, different lifestyles and things that I had never had the opportunity to see, even growing up in a major metropolitan city, Los Angeles, and going to university, in West Los Angeles, where it's quite diverse, but it's, in my opinion, not anywhere near New York City and the density.
Talk about, and you, so you went to school. Did all your education here in Southern California?
I did.
Okay.
I did. I did a study abroad in Greece.
Oh, well, wait a second.
I spent a summer in Greece. I did some travel in Europe subsequent to my study abroad, so I went back a few times and was able to, I just had this huge appreciation for travel, because I felt that every time that I stepped foot on different soil, I was just growing and fascinated by the way other people live their lives, and was able to compare that with the way that we live here and kind of appreciate our differences.
Now, with all that traveling, how did you have time for a job? I'm only kidding. You've had a varied career.
I have.
Talk about that.
Well, initially I thought I would be a teacher, so I went to graduate school in education, and while I enjoyed it, I found that really serendipitously, after 9/11 in New York City, that there was a part of me, because of my experiences growing up in a colorful community with lots of different adversities, I felt that there was a social worker side of me. And I paired up with an education company that provided things like stress management workshops in preschools. And it was really a chance encounter with this organization that just blossomed. And I loved the work I was doing because I was helping people to express themselves and to process their feelings about September 11th. And then I was still in the same field. I was in education. I was able to appreciate and help that developed into training those very same preschool teachers in other areas, so then I became more of an educator of educators.
Okay. And what were you educating them about?
I was helping them to develop professionally. So preschool teachers are often hired with just a few college classes, but then they're required to continue their education. So I was able to provide them with those classes in the actual workplace.
And this was in New York?
This was in New York.
Okay. And at what point did you come back?
So I came back after my grandmother passed away. That was the turning point. I felt that my grandfather needed me. They had raised me together, and I was ready to come back and sort of do my duty and help him. And I was able to maintain for 3 years my employment with the company that I worked in New York. So I traveled for 3 years for 1 week a month, and that was actually a wonderful experience. I was able to, do a week per month in the city and then come back to sunny California. So I was able to put my parka away and put on my flip-flops.
And what year was this?
That was from 2004 to 7.
At what point, and did you come back to live in Long Beach at that point?
I did. I came back to Long Beach. So I grew up in Wilmington, which is actually closer to downtown Long Beach than some parts of Long Beach.
Right.
So downtown Long Beach, where I currently live, is the area that I spent a lot of time in, growing up. And so I came back to downtown Long Beach. I loved it because it reminded me of New York, the density, the accessibility to transportation, the entertainment. And I had actually considered, I had been told that I was a good salesperson and I should get into real estate. So I actually got my license when I moved back, when I decided to stop working in New York and traveling got exhausting. And so I got my license and I did that for a year. And then I was connected to the magazine.
Right, we're going to talk about the magazine when we come back from a break. We're going to take a short break and we'll be right back. Welcome back to Voices in Our Head, PalacioMagazine.com's new podcast. And our guest is Andrea Sulsona, who's been talking about being back in Long Beach after some time away and talking about how she got into Palacio De Long Beach, some story about real estate. So why don't you pick up on that?
So I was selling real estate, and
What years was this again?
This was in 2007 to 2008. I only did real estate for a year, and one of my realtor friends told me about a real estate magazine. Palacio was originally conceptualized to be a magazine that had an emphasis more on real estate. The founder, the person with who came up with the name and with the concept of having a bilingual magazine was not me. It was someone in Idaho that wanted community partners, and I was willing to take that on as a project. And it evolved because of my experience, of my ties with this community and my education, my passion for education and health. It evolved from being the focus being on real estate, not so much. So I was supposed to go out and sell ads to realtors and write about, first-time buyers and things like that. But I had friends that worked in the health industry and friends that worked in education, and I decided that that's who I wanted to include. And then again, a year later, after all of these various Palacio Day fill in the blank, it was supposed to be a name of a city, and there were supposed to be several all over the country. None of them had done anything with the idea, and in fact, the person who had connected me to the printer and to the writer, to the printer and to the designer, decided that for personal health reasons of his child, that he was going to pull out completely and just say, "You can have this. You've done a great job. Have a nice day." So I continued doing it. It became mine completely.
Now, I'm just kind of curious, though. I mean, yes, I understand it started out as a real estate vehicle, but you didn't have any journalism background. So what were some of the challenges?
Well, I'm a big believer in just dive right in and wing it. And I consider myself a decent writer. And one thing I know I've always been good at is surrounding myself with people who I know are better than me. And so I made sure that if I was going to partner with any other writers, that it was people that I had developed a relationship with and an appreciation for their work in the community. So I had to make sure that that I listened to the feedback. After publishing the first couple of magazines, I made sure that I asked people, okay, what do you want to see more of? And that's how I continued to evolve and develop it into what it became.
What's your best memory of publishing the magazine?
My best, there's not really one memory. The memories that come to mind are the bringing together of people. It's the sort of the bridge building that I felt when I got together with the monolingual Spanish speaking woman, and
we should say that this was a bilingual magazine.
This was a bilingual magazine, and it was the feedback from people who were excited to read and learn a second language, and were excited when they told me, "Oh, you're the publisher of that magazine. I've been reading that, for months or for years, and I really enjoy that the articles are side by side." And so I guess my favorite memory is the bridge building. It's the knowing that I was exposing the two monolingual sides to one another.
And what years was this? From when to when?
2008 until 2014.
Now, at some point, you had to make a decision to turn it over to me, because I have faced many of the same challenges when you were beginning. But whether it's me or someone else, we still have a vacuum in Long Beach about journalism that serves the Latino community, principally. Are you ever surprised that bigger players haven't stepped in to help fill the vacuum? Because 42% Latino, we have a media desert here when it comes to not only just that community, the African American community, the Asian community, but are you surprised that other people haven't said, "Oh man, this is like, wow, what an opportunity"?
I am surprised. I know that while I was out there promoting the magazine, there was enthusiasm. There was certainly, leaders of organizations and business owners, they are aware that the numbers are as high as they are in terms of who the demographics in our community, that we're 42%, that we have a huge buying power, that we, it's important to reach the Latino community. I am surprised. It is a vacuum, exactly as you put it, and it's whoever really gets that is going to have the most impact. I mean, you cannot put out information and not have it somehow targeted to what's very close to the majority of the population.
What do you think needs to happen in that area? Or what would you like to see happen?
Just a greater awareness. I think that people should consider the importance of reaching the Latino community. I think that people need to recognize that it's not, it's not just the token, we're not just entertainers. We're not just, there's wonderful, brilliant contributions from Latinos that have to be recognized and have to be highlighted. And if you're a business owner, if you're a community organization, if you're not recognizing and outreaching to the Latino community, you're missing the boat. You're missing a big part of the community.
The one thing that I have learned through you and just my own experience and talking to other people is the diversity of this Latino community. It's not, you can't just say, oh, they're all immigrants. Well, they are. Many of them are. But they're not all recent immigrants. They're not all been here 100 years, but a lot of them have been.
Sure.
They're not, and the lines, the borders, between Wilmington and Long Beach, between Long Beach and Compton. I mean, there's this interesting diversity, both income, class, status, whatever. And I just always am. I mean, I wish I could tap into that, but I think finding other people wanting to, because I've had a lot of conversations with people about getting partners. I saw a thing you did, an interview with the LB Post talking about that. I'll be honest with you, people don't seem to be interested.
Well, I think that you've got to be, you've got to be persistent. It's most certainly you started with how diverse we are within ourselves, how there's different generational issues. There's different Latin American countries of origin. There's people that are Latino that don't speak Spanish, and there's people that are Asian but they're from a Latin American country. I mean, there's a diaspora. There's just a whole different. There's so many different types of Latinos, but I think they are interested.
Can you hold that thought for just 1 second? When we come back, we're going to finish that thought, and then we're going to talk about your present work with the Y and the community of Long Beach in the future. Welcome back to Voices in Our Heads, the premier podcast for PalacioMagazine.com. And my guest today is Andrea Sulsona, Executive Director, Early Childhood Education, the Greater Y of Long Beach. You're finishing up a thought, and I apologize for interrupting, but just in terms of how do we get people to recognize what we have here, and you were really talking about the diversity of the Latino community and the diaspora, and where do we go from here?
Well, I just think that cultural appreciation is important, and that it's our differences that make us unique and special, and it's important to highlight them. But then it's also important to find what we have in common, and I think what we all have in common in Long Beach is a strong passion for wanting it to be the best that it can be. We want Long Beach to be a place that serves, many future generations, and it's a good place that people will want to visit and will thrive. So I think finding what we have in common is going to be probably the most important, obviously, while you highlight and appreciate all of our differences.
Tell us about what you do now.
Okay, so I oversee 5 preschool locations. Funding comes from the state of California, so we serve low-income families. We give families the opportunity to go to work and leave their children in a high-quality, safe environment, give them that peace of mind, and help to prepare their children in the most important years. The first 5 years of a child's life are when 90% of those brain connections are happening. We try to support the family also and partner with them in being child's first teacher and helping them to understand what a critical role they play as parents and as teachers. So that's what we do at the YMCA ECE programs.
We did an issue in 2015 on education, and the one takeaway was the importance of early childhood education. So expand on that a little bit. How do you think we're doing as a society in that area?
I think we're doing well. I'm seeing it's becoming more mainstream. People are understanding the importance of those. But with brain research being a major topic in news articles and interviews, people are understanding how important those years are and how focus needs to be on that. So in Long Beach, we just had a panel on early childhood education that was presented by the Long Beach Education Foundation, and it was, the mayor and the superintendent, and lots of people sat on this panel and talked about why there's going to be more focus. And, as a city, we are spending time and energy on making sure that people understand the importance of early childhood education.
The one thing that also was discussed in this is those not only just the first 5 years, but even in those first 5 years, from birth to about 3, 4 years old kind of thing, when they're still too young to go to school or any preschool. What's been your experience in terms of what advice would you have for parents about those ages? What can they do, since it might be too young to take them to a preschool per se?
Well, learning definitely starts in the womb, and this is why people play classical music and talk to their children even before they're out of the womb. But speaking with your child before and speaking to them in language, not in baby babble, speaking and singing and playing with them, interacting with them, definitely not introducing technology to young children as a form of entertainment.
No iPads?
No iPads. No, let's hold off on that. And so, just spending time together, those interactions, consistent interactions are critical. Read to your child every single day. Make it, like something that you won't compromise on doing.
And the other part of that is, some parents, they've got to work, so they have to leave their child with either a babysitter, a grandmother, whatever. I mean, how do you kind of tackle that? Because you're not going to be with the child 24 hours a day.
You're not, but you want to make sure there are family child care providers, you want to make sure that you are comfortable with the style, the environment that your child is in. Your child is counting on you to advocate for them, and don't ever feel guilty if you are making sure that the environment that you're popping in at different times of the day, and that the environment is up to your standards, and that what's happening with the child is something that either you're doing or that you'd like to become more like. It's not something that is below your own personal standards.
We only have a couple of minutes left, but I have to talk about your other community work, because obviously you have plenty of time on your hands.
Sure.
So you're involved with the Kiwanis. You see, you're involved in so many things. Talk a little bit about that, and why is community work, community volunteering, and all these extracurricular things so important to you?
Well, I think what I understand through my work in early childhood education is that so much of our decisions as adults go back to our childhood. And so as a child, I was raised by my grandmother, and she only spoke Spanish, and she only had a second grade education, and she had other challenges. So I helped my grandmother negotiate her way through those challenges. Watching her sort of working her fingers to the bone and still finding time to help her neighbors was something that helped me to understand the importance of always being involved and giving back to the community that I live in. it's important for me to be involved because, it's important that I have a part in shaping the future community that my children live in.
Well, and actually, that was going to be my last question is the hard question, which is looking into your crystal ball and tell us what you think the future holds for the Latino community here in Long Beach.
Well, I think you just really need to look at the pattern of, where we've come from and where we are now. And so let's see, we have our first Latino mayor ever in history of our city. We have lots of other Latinos coming to positions of leadership. And my vision for the future is that it will, we're such a vibrant and hardworking people, and I'm sure that we will continue to take positions of leadership and to be a part of shaping the community.
I want to thank you. If anyone wants to follow up with questions for you, do you want to give them an email address or a website?
Sure. Yes, they can reach me at my email address, which is andrea.sulsona@lbymca.org.
And the website?
www.lbymca.org/ECE.
Thank you, Andrea Sulsona, for taking the time for the premiere edition of Voices in Our Heads for PalacioMagazine.com. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.